Hi guys. Today we are going to talk about using dialogue in our personal narrative that you guys are going to be writing. On Monday or in yesterday's class, we had talked about the importance of dialogue. We showed some examples and talked about how the dialogue helped move the story along and just made the story a little bit more interesting. So today we're going to focus on looking at dialogue and specifically looking at how to put dialogue into writing using proper grammar, okay, or conventions so that it's done correctly. So when we look about dialogue, so dialogue is when characters are talking to each other in writing. Um, Words are actually being spoken as opposed to you just reporting what they're saying. When you use dialogue, you're sort of allowing those characters to sort of have their part in the story. So if I look at this example, it says there's a basketball game, he passed the ball, he scored a basket, and the game ended. And when I ask, like, what do you notice about this story? Hopefully you notice that it's really boring. It's not very entertaining. It's pretty bland. There's nothing exciting about it. The words that are used are also very sort of typical or non-exciting. But if I look at it from this standpoint, and I look at it like almost through a comic, um, you can see something different. So when we use word bubbles, like in comics, which basically is meaning that there's dialogue, it changes the story. Okay. And by doing that, you add speaker tags and sound effects, and all of that is improving the quality of the story, but also sort of the interest level for whoever it is that is reading the story. If I were to take it out of the comic and just sort of write it as a story, you would see it down here below and say, "Go ahead and take the shot, kid. Take it," yelled the player. "I will," growled Nate. Bump, nab. The ball hit the floor with a pass to Teddy. Poof, the ball made it in the net just as the buzzer went off. "Changed my mind," said Nate. So again, the dialogue sort of helps make the story more interesting. And you'll notice here also the sound effects that are put into play also help engage the reader. So there's a lot of conventions that go along with dialogue. I by no means expect you to be able to memorize these. I do think that this needs to be a reference point for you. In your folder today, there's also a page in there. It should have popped up right when you opened up your folder for today with the rules as well. But there are quite a few rules. I'm not going to go through each one, but this would be a great reference point for you to come back to in the event that you need to look for something specific, okay? So when we talk about conventions and dialogue, um, one of the things that you guys probably already know is that when a new person speaks, when you're writing, you start a new paragraph and you indent. So if you look at this example, it says, "Are you okay?" I asked. He slowly turned over onto his hands and knees. I now have a new speaker. Okay, so new paragraph and I end it. "Yeah," he said, wincing, "I've had worse." Again, I'm going to have a new paragraph and a new speaker. Mom pointed at him as if he were a garden pest. "He's a heap of trouble," she said to me. Okay, so one of the important things to note is that when you're having conversations between characters, every time a new person speaks, you start a new paragraph. So you bump your story down. When we think about punctuating quotes, there's basically four different types of sentences that we're going to see. So the first one is going to be a sentence followed by a tag. And a tag is going to be the Jim said, I said Sally, something along those lines. So you'll see here, I have in quotes, it says, "Let's go, comma, end quote, Jim said." The second one you often will see is when a tag interrupts a sentence. Okay. So for in this example, "Let's go before it rains." So this is one big sentence, but the tag is interrupting it. So I say, "Let's go, comma, end quote, Jim said, comma, before it rains." So I use a comma here after Jim said because this is going to finish my sentence. and then I put the period inside the quotes. The third one you're going to see is going to be a tag followed by a sentence. So I'm going to say who the speaker is first. So Jim said, comma, let's go before it rains, end quote. Okay, and again, my punctuation is going to be in the quotation marks. And then the last one's going to be one that doesn't have a tag. So I could just say, let's go before it rains. And there doesn't need to be a tag if the speaker is implied, which occasionally you will come across this. Okay, so we're going to look through each of these and do some practice here. So quotes start and end the words that come out of the character's mouth. So if you think about like what you would put inside the bubble of a comic, okay, so you'll see here that what's in blue is the quote and yelled the player would be considered the tag, okay? Punctuation marks are placed inside the quotation marks. So, you know, no way, exclamation point, that's emphasizing the way to which they're speaking. Shouted Henry. We use speaker tags to let the reader know how the character spoke. Okay, so you can use words like screamed, whispered, yelled. You could just use the word said. But these words are important just to bring the reader in a little bit more into exactly how the conversation is going. Punctuation is also going to play an important role. You know, an exclamation point indicates that, you know, it's going to be loud, it's going to be said with excitement. The word whispered tells me that it's going to be said quietly. You know, so using terms like that is going to be helpful. It shouldn't always be said blank. All right, we want to use different words to indicate the characters and how they're speaking. You want to separate the tag, again, the tag is here, from the dialogue with punctuation of some sort. So it's either going to be a comma, a question mark, or an exclamation point, okay? And we'll get into that a little bit further along also. When the speaker tag is at the beginning, you're going to separate it with a comma, as we talked about earlier, okay? And if it's at the end, it will depend on what the quote is, if there's going to be a comma or punctuation. So we're going to go through a couple of examples. So here it says, I'm bored, comma, said Carla, let's go shopping. So this is its own sentence, and this is its own sentence, okay? And so I put a period and quotations around both of them, and I put a comma after bored to separate that from the speaker tag. This is another example similar where I'm going to have a whole sentence and then yet another whole sentence. So, oh yeah, comma, joked Micah, comma, I just love to get a new dress, because it completes the sentences. I'm sorry, a comma comes after Micah because of what follows completes the sentence. What are you staring at? Peter asked with a grin, period. Who is so interesting in that group? Question mark. Quotation marks. Okay, so you can see here both of them are questions, so I'm going to put question marks there inside both sets of quotes. Okay, let's do a couple examples ourselves. So my state has the craziest laws, said Shelby. And then I have one that says, in California you can't set up a mousetrap without a hunting license, she continued. So you'll see here that the said Shelby is going to be my tag. All right, that's my speaking tag. My state has the craziest laws. That's going to be a complete sentence, okay, but I have a tag after it. So when I go to correct it, I'm going to put my quotes, and I'm going to put a comma between my quote or what was being spoken and my speaking tag. Down below, the quote was already started for me here, okay? In California, you can't set up a mousetrap without a hunting license. Okay, exclamation point, quotation mark. So this would be sort of an exciting or like a astounding kind of statement. So I would put the exclamation point in front of the quotes, and then I would continue with or finish with the tag, which is be she continued. Once in Boston, you couldn't own a dog over 10 inches high, said Chris. So again, you'll see that the said Chris is going to be my tag. Okay, the rest of it's going to be the quote. So I'm going to put the quotes in and put a comma between what was said and my tag. Down below, so what, asked Kristen, you can't peel an orange in a hotel room in California. So the so what is a question, so I'm going to put the quotes around that. Here's my tag, which means it's not going to have quotes, and then I'm going to requote what she says after that. Okay? I know this is a lot to absorb and kind of take in, but we're going to do a little bit of practice today to sort of practice. And I do want you to come back and you can reference either this slide or the end here of my presentation, or you are able to use the study guide sheet that I put in your Schoology folder for today. Okay, so in your questions today, there aren't very many of them, but read them really carefully. Okay, they're going to look very similar to each other, but there's differences. There's like maybe a comma's there or isn't there. So be really mindful before you select your answer choices today. Okay? All right, guys, have a great day. Good luck.